everyone. Welcome back to Say It Loud. I'm currently here with Shakia Danielson from the Northwest Tap Connection. Shakia, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you've done that's gone viral?
So a little bit about myself. My name is Shakia. I'm Seattle-based MC and choreographer, and in 2016 was blessed to put together a piece in response to a lot of the footage involving innocent or unarmed Black men being killed by law enforcement. The piece was inspired by overhearing a conversation with some of my younger students. They're about 6 or 7 years old, and there were 3 young boys discussing how to survive law enforcement, and that's kind of been the catalyst for where this whole entire piece came from. It tore me up, to hear children discussing how they plan on surviving law enforcement, and I did it at a show that I put on in 2016 called The Groupement, and then later on at a block party, and it was like a rickety cell phone clip that I think it was 4th of July weekend in 2016, where it just started. It was like wildfire, and it just kept going and going and going.
Wow, that's really powerful. I really liked hearing your story and what inspired you and why you put that out there. I think it's touched a lot of people, and it definitely shows in the video just how passionate every single person was, and the emotion that came out of each dancer that was in that video was really, really powerful. Can you tell us a little bit about the fundraising that you've also done?
So since COVID hit, everything's shut down, and there's not a ton of funding readily available for the arts in any city, especially Seattle. But there was a GoFundMe page that came up, and this piece initially came out in 2016, and in light of recent events with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, you have, again, it's nothing new, but it's a second wave, if you will, of this cathartic art that's needed. And so my whole thing was, if people love the art, that's great, but let's help keep the doors open. And so we're over 75% of our goal of 75,000. And this is part of the owner of the studio's choice not to take from any other funds that might be needed for individual teaching artists. She was just like, let's just take a church approach and give if you want to support and keep the doors open, and the community has shown up. So we're grateful.
Wow, it sounds like you have a very strong purpose behind what you're doing. Can you share exactly what that purpose is and what your mission is in everything that you're doing?
So with this specific piece, I think it was a combination of empowering children to have a means and a methods of protest. It also was a way to, hey, we can't vote. They're not old enough to vote yet or anything like that, but they can assist with making sure that these names don't get swept under the rug. This issue, this systemic issue, isn't so easily blown off, but it's, still put in the forefront. And I also think it's important to being connected to the church, having a presence in community and not being separated from, social justice issues and things that are kind of plaguing, in the earth right now. And so it's my overall purpose for me personally is to glorify God with what I do personally. And then the other thing too is I care to be effective. There's a lot of people who clicked on it or whatever, but it's not about, ooh, this was popular, because really the core of it is horrible. It's like, oh, it's meeting a need. It's helping people release. It's helping people cry. And it's also encouraging. And it puts the future back in front of your face, because eventually these kids will grow up and they will be dealing with or having to live in the results of what we do now. And we don't always think about that,
Absolutely. I really liked how you said you're trying to educate young people on understanding what exactly systemic racism is and just kind of breaking down what's going on with police brutality. And I guess I'm wondering, what are you instilling in the young people that you work with? Maybe one or two key things that they can work on doing in trying to improve these really terrible problems that we're having, because there isn't just one answer, but what can we focus on doing to make some improvement in solving this horrible problem?
In regards to what's being instilled in them, I'll give two things. One is I always tell them how cool they are, because that might not seem like a big deal, but being cool is so important to a kid. And highlighting the things that make them cool is the fact that they read, the fact that they get great grades, the fact that they show up on time, the fact that they, the fact that they turned in their homework. All those things are dope. There's a group of young ladies that I had, my 6-year-olds, and I was like, cool chicks read books. We read, so it's like just making them comfortable in their cool, so they don't ever feel clowned for things that make them great. And then the other thing is, don't shrink when you are met with eye contact. That's a big thing when you're performing, and you catch somebody staring at you. Sometimes you want the lights on you so much so you don't have to see the people, but every now and again you see the people and it can jar you. And I think that's just a metaphor for life. Sometimes when you start looking at people, it could juke you from your call. It can juke you from your path. It can juke you from what you're made to do. But when you get your eyes off those people, and every now and again, you just don't have to look back. Sometimes you just got to look back,
Absolutely.
and so, not moving because eyes are on you, but still standing in, what's for you. And then I can't remember your other question. I'm sorry. You had a second one. I can't remember.
I asked you about what you're instilling in them, and then also what's one or two things that you're maybe pushing for them to do in order to make improvements in their own way, maybe getting involved in activism to try to improve these matters surrounding systemic racism and police brutality.
Some of them, because they are your students, they do what you do. So some of them now are in college. There's a couple of them that were maybe 14 at the time, and they've graduated. They're in their first year of college, and now they are doing things in the city. They're making videos. They are dancing. They're tapping. They're using their art. And then I think for kids who, again, they're not old enough, we have children out here using their sidewalk chalk. There's a group of kids using their sidewalk chalk to write Black Lives Matter on the concrete. They're sometimes you don't know you can protest in that way. Some people, they don't show up to the marches, but they're going to clean up. Some people, they do show up to the marches, but they only show to make sure people have water. Other people are, donating food, and on Sundays they give out food to the community and stuff like that. So just finding your lane, and making sure it's an authentic lane. Making sure it's an authentic lane, because you could by peer pressure jump into something because you think it's going to validate your heart. Well, the core of you may really be more effective in another area. So it's important to find your lane and be authentic in your activism.
Wow, that's beautiful. Finding what's authentic, finding what's you, and standing in it. That's really powerful.
Yes. Yep.
I absolutely agree with that. You can get involved in ways that work for you and that suit you. You don't have to, go out of your own lane or try to turn into someone that you're not. You can do what works for you and be your authentic self, which is really beautiful.
Yeah.
And I also like that you're telling these kids, you're cool. What you do is cool.
Yeah, they're cool. You gotta call them cool.
Right. That's awesome. Like, stand in it.
You gotta call them cool. Yeah, they gotta own it. I tell them to own it. Come on now.
Yes.
Own it. You find them looking at you, look back.
Absolutely. Young kids, especially young Black kids, need to hear that, and they deserve to hear that. Every day.
Yes. Like, y'all are dope.
Every day. Absolutely. Wow. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. I really enjoyed speaking with you, and you gave us some really great insight in what you're doing. Please don't stop doing what you're doing, because you are making a huge difference and touching the hearts of many people. And I know that I, myself, and everyone at Say It Loud really appreciates your work. So thank you again.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.